Okay, let me know if you can hear me now. It's coming. I see it now. So we might be good. Let me know if we're good now. We should be good now. There it is. Yay! Oh, I'm glad. Okay, let me see if I can put you guys in a better spot so that I can see the chat and talk to you, and we can paint and hang out. I always get, my laptop's gonna be in the frame, I think, a little tiny bit. There we go. Yay! I'm so glad it's working now. Thank you for your patience. My husband is doing a stealth entry. Oh, thank you. There he goes. He literally just crawled in and out of the room. Okay. Oh, thank you for the hair compliments, you guys. That's so nice. I literally cut my hair myself on New Year's Eve. I've needed a haircut for like 3 years. I haven't had a haircut in a long time. So it was time. It was time for a haircut. Oh, you guys are so nice. Okay, so I've tried to list as many of the things I'm going to be using in the description. So if you're curious about what I'm using, you can find links in the description. These are, I know this is a White Nights palette, but these are Roman small watercolors. I see some of you are mentioning it. It is Roman small, and you can see the links in the description. So yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I mentioned I haven't had a haircut in 3 years. That's actually because 3 years ago I shaved my head for multiple reasons. Partly because I was tired of my hair at the time, and also I was just kind of tired of like the vanity that it inspired in me, you know, like to constantly be looking at it or touching it or, you know, worrying about it. So I just needed a fresh start, and it was a fun experience. Okay. I would really love to finish this sketchbook, you guys. I have had this sketchbook for so long. Oh no, the empty white night case says it's unavailable. I'm sorry, guys. I'll have to, when the stream is over, I will see if I can find it somewhere else for you. And thank you to Cameron, who's giving advice. I appreciate it. Yeah, audio should be good now. Okay. So yeah, I started working in this sketchbook in the end of March of 2020. So it's been almost a year and I haven't finished it, mostly just because I don't work in my sketchbook a lot. Like, I don't get to spend a lot of time on there. I do have Twitch, but I don't use it as often. If you guys think that Twitch would be better than YouTube for streaming, just let me know. To be honest, I don't really have a huge preference about which platform I use. Streaming like this on YouTube is nice because I can use it as an alternative to weekly videos if I have other things going on in the week, or if I just want to do like you know, if I want to do just hang out with you guys instead of a regular video, you know. Yes, I will adjust the sketchbook and everything once we get started. Don't worry. I won't be leaving everything quite like this. Okay, so my goal today is to talk to you guys a bit about color theory. Don't worry, we'll come in a little bit closer soon. And it's one of those tools that the more I learn about it, the more excited I am. Another thing that I wanted to say is, while we are streaming, if you have any specific questions, like anything you want to know specifically about color theory, just make sure you write at Arlee Bean in your message if you have a question, and please reserve the tags of me for questions about color theory so that I can see your comments. There's so many of you. Thank you for being here, and I will do my best to answer questions once we get started. Okay, so here I have this pocket color wheel. It's actually kind of hard to see all of the colors because everything is like, you know, covered up because of rules and things. So let's bring you in to the color wheel. And we're gonna start pretty basic, and then we will work our way like forward with things. So if we were looking specifically at primary colors on this wheel as they're labeled, we would have red, yellow, and blue. We are gonna do some painting, and we're gonna make some color wheels today, like different variations of color wheels, so we'll get there. Red, yellow, and blue being our primary colors, and then we have secondary colors of violet, green, and orange, which are equal mixes of the primaries. And then, oh yeah, color theory in terms of how you prefer to mute colors. Thank you. We will do that. I got this color wheel from Blick Art Supplies, I believe, from Blick, yeah. It's just a couple of dollars, and so we have primary colors, secondary colors, which are mixes of the primaries, and then tertiary colors, which are variants in between those. So a little bit more yellow or a little bit more orange, you know, over here on this side of the wheel. So those are the basics. This wheel is actually really interesting because it shows you, as you turn it, what colors look like if you add more of the primary colors to them. So if you add more red to a blue-green, or if you add more yellow to a blue, it's actually really interesting to look at. You know, if you add more white to an orange, or if you add black to a yellow-orange, it's actually super interesting to look at and to shift. It's fun just to like move this thing around. There's a value scale, and then on the back, this particular wheel helps you to, it shows you like complementary colors, and then split complementary, triads, tetrads. So basically what I mean is complementary colors are colors that are directly opposite one another on the color wheel. So orange and blue are complementary colors. Yellow and purple are complementary colors. And if we just look at the primaries, red and green are complementary colors. And colors that are complementary do two primary things. So they will, when you put them right next to each other, they accent one another and they make each other look more vibrant. It's a really interesting technique to have complementary colors right next to each other. And also, when you mix two complementary colors, they neutralize one another and create a gray. So that this can help you, you know, if you're going like, what's the complementary color of this particular hue? And you can get a close range if you're not sure. Triads are colors that are equidistant apart from one another on the color wheel. So that's this triangle here, if you can see that. So this is kind of helpful for building interesting color palettes. Like for example, red, yellow, and blue are triads. So those are equidistant apart from each other. It's going to give you a lot of variation in color palettes, and it's going to make it look more colorful if you use triads because the colors are so far apart from one another on the wheel. I tend to prefer slightly more analogous, that's right, color palettes. So colors that kind of sit in one range, you know, like this range from red to blue, or like red to yellow orange. And like for this painting, for example, we've got some complementary colors in that there's red and then greenish hues. So they stick out more next to one another, but also there's a lot of analogous color here where there's lots of blue and green and yellow and colors that sit closer to each other in the color wheel. So these blend together a bit more. I'm looking at all of your questions. learning to incorporate color into portraits. If we have time today, I want to do a couple color wheels and then a quick portrait practice so we can talk more about incorporating color. It has a lot to do with just accentuating and exaggerating existing colors, and we will use like some sort of reference or something for an example. So like if something is a little bit, like my hand, for example, you know, my hand is more pink up here and more blue-ish down here, and a bit more like lighter colored, a little bit more neutral, like maybe a little bit more yellow. So if we went pink, yellow, blue, and then we just accentuate those colors. And of course it's totally different on the back of my hand, but it has to do a lot with just exaggerating local color, and that can take some time to see and to get used to observing. Yep, the best way to mute colors is the exact opposite on the color wheel. So yeah, if you had a red color and you wanted it to be a little less saturated, you could add a green. Definitely. And yes, this will stay up after the live stream is done. So after the live stream is done, this will be up just like a regular YouTube video if you want to come back to it and go through it. So let's go ahead and do some actual painting together. We'll start over here, and if at any point you guys have trouble seeing what I'm working on, just let me know and I will make adjustments. We're going to start with like a basic color wheel with like what would be considered like more like standard primary colors, and then we will venture into other things. Let me make sure we're in focus here. If anything looks too bright or too dark, just let me know. Gonna grab a brush. Which brush? How about, I think I said I was gonna use my black velvet, my silver black velvet brushes, so we'll start with that. My water is actually a little murky. I was filling my water containers like 3 minutes before I was supposed to start streaming. So, yeah, I did zoom in a little because we're going to start painting. Okay, so we're going to start with a kind of standard red, yellow, blue, and I'm going to be using a magenta for my red, and then something closer to a cyan for my blue. So we've got this magenta color, and let's use like a slightly warmer, I have a cool yellow and a warm yellow here, but we're gonna use the slightly warmer one. That didn't need to be so close. And we've got our yellow. Thank you so much to the people who are helping out and answering questions about like supplies I'm using, or if there's things you know, you're helping each other. That's so nice. I appreciate that. You guys are awesome. So if we were treating these like standard primary colors, this is like a medium yellow, this is a phthalo blue, and then this is like a magenta red. I will double check the specific Roman small color names, so if you're looking for these particular colors, I will let you know. Okay, so then if we wanted to mix from these basic, oh, my sister's here. So my sister lives in California and she's here. Hello, my sister. You guys can say hi to my sister, she's great. She told me she might stop by the stream. So nice of her to come by. Okay, I wonder if I can bring you guys in even closer for our color wheel. Like that. Here we go. That looks good. So we've got our red. We'll mix in some yellow to see how close we can get to like a middle of the road orange. One thing that's going to limit in this palette like a super bright clean orange is actually this magenta because it's a little bit dusty. Oh, you guys are saying hi to her. So you can see our our orange is actually a little bit desaturated. Warm and cool pinks. Yeah, pink is actually an interesting way to use the term, because you will actually find that there are you guys, my sister. There are warm and cool reds might be a better way to determine it. So warm reds will be closer to orange. Cool will be closer to purple. Yeah, telling the difference between cool and warm primaries. It can be a difficult thing to picture in your head, but we will go through some of that. Okay, I need to clear a spot on my palette here. I never clean my palette, but when it comes to like trying to mix clean colors like this, I always wish I had clean space in my palette. So now let's work on like a standard green. Again, focusing on these colors that we have. And it's really interesting because when it comes to straight secondary colors, these are colors I definitely don't use super often. I tend to desaturate my colors a lot and mix colors with each other. Oh, someone asked what my pronouns are. She, her. Yep, she, her is good for me. Thank you for asking. And then let's do a purple. And then, so we'll use our magenta. Do you guys want to see this? Can you see this? Not, okay, a little bit. Magenta and our phthalo blue. So you can see this time I added too much blue. So the result of having too much blue in that mix is we get actually something kind of close to an indigo, which is really pretty. But I want to start with a purple. That phthalo blue is so strong that it takes like a lot of red to get somewhere back towards the middle. But it's a really pretty purple that it makes. So nice. So if this was something kind of standard, there are a lot of ways that we could mix colors in between. If we wanted to start with something basic, we could go like a reddish violet there. And then if we added more blue, which we can get like a really interesting sort of indigo color. That one I absolutely love. A color like this, which you can't actually see because my face is blocking it, sorry. So something like that. Oh, you guys are so nice. Thank you. You guys are so nice. Okay. Okay. I don't know how to, sometimes it's difficult for me to process your sweet compliments. This is another color. I tend to favor tertiary colors a lot. So this sort of turquoise in between blue and green, you know, in between the primary color blue and the secondary color green. Really love this. Somebody asked about keeping a gesture drawing loose, and I would recommend using large strokes and doing short gestures. So like 30-second gesture drawings, like something really short. I would really love to do some figure drawing live streams. I think that would be so fun to practice figure drawing with you guys. So working shorter and also working like bigger can be really helpful. So instead of making them too tiny where you're doing short little strokes, give your arm space to move, you know? That can be really helpful in doing larger gestures. Okay, and then if we wanted to make a yellow green, whoops, we can add some more yellow to our blue. Again, that phthalo blue is so strong. Somewhere in there. And then you would find that you were able to get, if you were to use like a more orangey, come on brain, make words. A yellow that was a bit more orange, so a warmer yellow, or a warmer red, so a red that was closer to orange, you would be able to mix cleaner oranges than you can with this particular like magenta color that I have here. And exercises like this are super nice because it's actually helping me to realize colors that I rely on a lot and use a lot. And there are a lot of tertiary colors that I tend to favor, like the mix of red and yellow where it's heavier on red. That's one that I use a lot. Ooh, the auto mod is deleting a lot of good comments. I apologize. I tried to like, this is my first time using the mod, and I wanted to, I went in and like edited some of the default settings for the mod. So thank you for your patience. I will definitely make some more adjustments to that in the future. I think specifically the one that I was seeing pop up was length of the comments. So I will adjust that so to allow longer comments. Thank you guys for your patience. Okay. So this is like a pretty standard palette. Let's do one that's like a quick variation. Yeah, I see that it is deleting long messages. Oh no, I'm so sorry. I will adjust the character length very soon. I think it's currently set to like 140 characters. Yeah. Thank you guys. I will let you know in the I will definitely adjust that for next time. I have to keep cleaning my palette, which is so foreign to me. I usually don't, I like never clean my palettes. I just end up using stuff that's already there. The shipping on Patreon sticker orders cost more? Is it, or is it the, no, there's no extra shipping. Like whatever you pledge for sticker sheets on Patreon, that's what you pay. So, there's not an additional shipping charge on Patreon. Thank you for asking. I used to have separate tiers for international physical rewards, but I recently combined them. So, international and domestic, which is United States for me, they are the same. So, yeah. Thank you for asking. Okay. Oof, I almost dropped this entire palette on the floor. All right, let's make some variations. So I have this one. Let's try my favorite red in this palette, which is a little bit warmer. So it's a bit closer to like a an orange. It's like, I think it might be like their Quinacridone Cherry or something like that. A warm red is definitely my preference. Someone asked if I prefer a warm or cool orange. I don't use orange on its own. Oh, okay, I've been thinking about this. Mr. Umbra, I don't know if you had asked this before about dealing with paint water disposal, but I wanted to quick brain. I wanted to mention this. If disposing of paint water can be really tricky, especially depending on where you live and what sort of like plumbing system you have. It's not always like a great idea to, you know what, I want to use a different yellow too. We're going to use like a Naples yellow. Hold on. It's not always great to just dump your paint water down the drain. And my husband and I have been talking a lot about this to work out like a system. And what we were thinking is if you have like a shallow, wide bin, you know what I mean? Something you can just set in like a garage or an empty space that you don't need to worry about, and dump your paint water into that bin and give the water time to evaporate. And then all you have left is the dried bits of paint, you know, like that sediment, the paint that sits in the bottom of the water container. Oh boy, that thing needs to be turned off. So you could allow the water to evaporate and then trash the dry bits, you know, like scoop it out with, like, if you wanted to use a paper towel or a rag or something like that. Let me shut this tablet down real quick. And yeah, it doesn't have to go down the drain. I think you could. Yeah, I had definitely gotten to the habit of putting it down the sink, but depending on, you know, again, where you live, your septic system, like we live in a new house now where the septic is different from where we used to live, which was in a town. So now it's different here, and we have to be more careful about what we put down the drains. So we've been brainstorming other options. Oh, I just totally said I wasn't going to do this, and then I did it anyway. Okay, we're starting over, and we're doing it right this time. Somebody asked if my husband paints. Let me zoom you guys out a little bit. My husband doesn't paint, but he does draw. And he actually was drawing before I was. Yeah, my husband, like, that was how we met, was through his art, his drawing. And, yeah, he draws. Oh no, you had to unclog your sink? That does not sound like fun at all. Yeah, if anybody has any ideas for disposing of paint water, let me know. When will my handmade watercolors launch? I have no idea. I'm sorry. I know that's definitely not the answer that you guys wanted. I would love to be able to give you a clearer answer. But with the moving and everything, and I'm still trying to set up the studio, I just haven't really had. Yeah. Oh yeah, I think that if, like, the stagnant water thing and mosquitoes, if I was to do that, it would probably be indoors, like in our garage or something that's not going to be super exposed to outside. And I do have somebody asked if I recommend the Etcher Lab sketchbook. That's what I'm using currently. And I have a video on it, and I love it. It's fantastic. This is the everyday sketchbook. So like their perfect sketchbook, or there's some others that I haven't tried yet. We're going to use indigo today for this other wheel. This is one of my favorite triads here. So while this is more of a standard, like, CMY, yeah, CMY triad here with magenta, cyan, and yellow. This is like a phthalo blue. You could vary it more towards a turquoise if you wanted something closer to a cyan. Yep, there's always things to be careful, Sam's art said about mold. Yep. And then, like, this is, after we do this last color wheel, we're going to move on to other things. So this is that Quinacridone Cherry, or a warmer red. This is their Naples Yellow Reddish, and this is indigo. And I love this combination of colors. It allows me to desaturate my colors much more easily. So like, look at this orange is so different. Okay, and now let's try this red with our indigo. All the purples and blues in this palette are so, this is interesting. Look at this purple. It's like way earthier almost. It's so different. Do you think that You have to go to art school to be good at drawing and painting. No, I don't. I didn't go to art school. I think it can be a really valuable resource for a lot of people, especially if that structure benefits you. There's a lot of connections to be made by going to art school, you know, connections to companies and to other artists and people. But I don't think that it's a requirement. There are so many people that you can learn from without going to so that sort of formal education. It's hard, and there have definitely been times where I wish I had more structure, you know. Let me get some sort of, okay, this is funny. My kids left this marker up here, this Crayola marker. I'm gonna use it. So real quick, let's do that and focus you. So I want to separate. Look at this, is so professional, you guys. I'm a professional. This is what professionals do. They use Crayola markers and make big messes and paint the wrong things. Warm and cool blues. We'll talk about that in a second. So if we're looking at the differences here, these colors are much earthier and have just less saturation, not as clean and vibrant as these ones over here. This is a more standard color palette, and over here we have something a little bit muted and less saturated. This generally tends to be my preference depending on how you're working. Like, look at this green. It's so like mossy and almost brown, and I like that a lot. Knowing what you know now, how would you structure your learning if starting from scratch? Oh my. That's difficult to say. I think I would invest more time in just learning instead of forcing myself to post on social media. So like I tried to learn and post on social media at the same time, which can work if you're able to focus on the learning. But while I was trying to learn and also quote unquote grow a platform, which I wasn't even trying to do professionally at that time, it stressed me out, and I altered the kinds of things that I would draw and didn't allow myself as much freedom to learn because I was like torn between just, I want to learn and I know that means I need to draw this thing 50 times. And instead I was like, okay, I drew this one thing, now I have to do something completely different so I can post it on the internet, you know. So silly things like that. Yeah. So this is a more standard wheel. This is a more desaturated, earthy wheel. Let's talk about the difference in warmer and cooler colors. So, because that's something that a lot of you guys are asking about. So we need the Crayola markers. Okay, come back, Crayola marker. So if we wanted to talk about, I don't want to regret how I set this up, okay? What color is this marker? It says black, but it doesn't feel super black, to be honest. It's like greenish. I wonder if it like dilutes in water. I need to know. Hold on. Yeah, look, it's like an indigo-y blue-black color. Okay, sorry. I got distracted by the Crayola. That would be interesting to use these as like watercolor markers for a video, like Crayola markers. Greener blue is cooler than a purpler blue, and got confused. Oh yeah, that can be really confusing. To be honest, when it comes to cooler and warmer colors, it's all about, yeah, Crayola black is kind of green. So when it comes to warmer and cooler colors, it's all about relationships between the colors. So when you're comparing two particular colors, one color might be warm and the other might be cool, but that can vary depending on the colors that you're looking at, you know? Here. That's so funny how many of you were like, yeah, Crayola black is green. Like, like so many of you just know. Okay. So if we were talking about more, here, this one color I want to show you that's warm, it's like really dirty in my palette. Let me clean it real quick. So if we're talking about warmer colors, I think the first warm color I think of is like an orange. This is not a super clean orange. This is an earthier orange that I chose. And so we've got that. We've got this sort of Indian yellow. Like warm, of course, I think of warm being like fire and cool being like water, but there's going to be some variation in that. So this red here is going to look cooler. It's going to look more purpley, I should say, or more pink than this orange. But when you put it next to something that is clearly much cooler, you can see the warmth in it. So it's all about color relationships. You know, like looking at two colors that are next to each other. So if we were looking specifically at blues, blues are ones where I used to get really confused, because a blue that is closer to purple is cooler than a blue that is closer to green. It's so weird. Like even now saying it, I'm so sure that I'm gonna get it wrong, you know? So, like, let's just look at them side by side. Ignoring our little chart up top for a minute. Okay, so we're ignoring this. We're just making some swatches. So this is that indigo, which is a beautiful deep blue. And I think because it's so deep, we can go, this is warm. And really, to be honest, it doesn't matter that much. What matters about is the relationship between colors. And then compared to like a phthalo blue, you can really see the difference in temperature. And except for the fact that my head is in the way. Or maybe blues the other way around. To be honest, the importance is something like a phthalo blue is going to give you the opportunity to mix cleaner greens because the color is closer to green. And something like an indigo is going to allow you to mix cleaner purples because the color is closer to purple. So if I wanted to mix a purple with our indigo, that's where we get colors like this, where it almost looks kind of brown. And if I mix with, and that's actually partly because of this color being so warm. So to show you a good example of like a cleaner, like more royal purple, we could look at these two colors mixed together, like this magenta mixed with the indigo. I'm kind of like making a big mess now. So if we were to, okay, ignore my markings up top. This is just going to be mixes of these two colors right here. And with varying amounts of the red and blue. Because these colors are closer to purple on the color wheel, they're going to mix a cleaner purple. Easier. As opposed to colors that are further from purple on the color wheel. So for example, these are two colors that are close to purple. So what I mean by that, if we look at our color wheel, here's purple, here's that sort of blue violet, and here's our red. They're very close to purple. And they want to mix purple. As opposed to if we went to colors like a blue-green, like a turquoise, and a warmer red, they're further away from purple on the color wheel, and they aren't going to mix as clean of a purple. So let me show you an example. If we take our warmer red, like this one here, which you now can probably barely see. So if we took our warmer red, which is, it says cool here, please ignore that, and we mixed it with a blue that was closer to green. So I'm specifically going to use a turquoise because it's closer to green. You can kind of see it already. It's red and it's blue, but that doesn't mean that they're going to mix a purple. So let's look and we'll see the difference. So even though we have red and green, or red and blue, sorry, if we've got our red and we mix it with our turquoise, the first color we get already is looking not super purple, like not like a super clean purple. So let's just do some swatches. And you can see, yeah, that's a really good point. Colleen said it's almost getting into complementary colors. Yeah, that's very true. Because, yeah, we're pushing the colors further apart on the color wheel, so they want to neutralize each other. They want to desaturate each other a bit more. So, like, for example, this is also a mix of those two colors. And it's not really possible to get that same sort of purple. Again, this is a mix of these colors. So these purples are not going to be as clean and as bright as like the purples you can get from two colors that are close to each other. Now my preference is to just desaturate my colors. You know? Yeah, I understand now why your purples are muddier. Yeah, it depends. The red and blue that you matter, the red and blue that you use matter. So if you want your color to be cleaner, use colors that are closer to that color on the color wheel. And if you want to desaturate the color, pull them apart. Again, if I can find a link to it, I will add it to the description. This color wheel is from Blick Art, whatever they're calling their website and company now. If you prefer cleaner colors, you can certainly start there. If you'd like to give yourself like an earthier base and go from there, you can, you know, and that's generally tends to be my preference. So I use color. Oh yeah, I got mine from Blick, but you can probably get it from other places too. So what I would really like to do is to do a quick portrait practice. I think that could be really fun. And then we could talk about how I mix the colors and how I place colors next to each other. Does that sound fun to you guys? I think I'm actually going to not use this sketchbook so I can give this time to dry. Yes, CMY, which is cyan, magenta, yellow, gets less muddy in general. I agree completely. Okay, I'm going to grab some different watercolor paper. Oh boy. I haven't used this one in a while. Yes, portrait, yay! It'll be fun. Someone asked how. How does painting a warm blue with a cool red give a better, cleaner purple? It can seem weird because they're contrasting each other, because warm and cool, but it's really about their relationship and closeness. Like I'll reiterate this one more time. It's because they're closer to each other on the color wheel. So a cooler red, which is going to push more towards blue, somewhere in this range, with a warmer blue, which is pushing more towards red, something in here, they're really close to purple already, so they want to mix purple. Same thing with greens. You know, if you used a warmer yellow that was closer to orange, and you wanted to make a green, but then you used a blue that was way over here, they're not going to want to make a clean green because they're so far apart from each other. on the color wheel, as opposed to like a phthalo blue that sits in here and like a lemon yellow that sits in here. They're really close to green. So they're going to mix like a cleaner, more vibrant green. So which may or may not be your preference. It's all about what you're going for in that particular instance. Oh my goodness, thank you for the hair compliments, you guys. I gave myself a haircut over New Year's and I'm really happy with it. Okay, we are going to reposition some stuff. Okay, so I am using, let's back you up so you can see a little better. I'm going to be sketching. Sketching on camera makes me nervous. Whoops. Okay. So the paper I'm using today is the Bao 100% cotton, like their fine grain, which is kind of their equivalent to like a hot press paper. And I don't have very many sheets left in here. There might only be like 1 or 2 sheets left. I need to get some more. This is I think it's my favorite watercolor paper. I haven't used it in a while, to be honest. So I'm excited. Thank you. Ooh, you need to make a self-portrait for art class. Do I have any tips? You can, if you have like a small mirror, you can look at your face in the mirror and like look at it from different angles, try to find an angle that you like. Maybe move yourself around in front of a mirror and think, or in front of like a window and think, are there certain lighting things that you like, you know? So your self-portrait, do you have to like do it a particular way or use particular art supplies? Because it can also be fun to go, I'm gonna see what happens if I make my face more purple or more blue and stick to like a small number of colors and keep it, you know, closer to certain things. I know that's kind of big. Okay. I am going to pull up a reference photo and figure out what kind of face I want to draw today. I'm going to use Pinterest. Oh, excuse me while I've been looking at lots of plants on Pinterest. Don't we all just spend a lot of time looking at plants on Pinterest? Yeah, the Bao paper, I love it. It's so nice. This live will be saved. Like if you go to like my uploads or you click on videos at the channel, you will be able to see it there. It'll be there. Thank you for asking. Okay. And I will also put a link in the video. If somebody could remind me in the comments once this is on the channel in case I forget, I will add a link to my Pinterest account so that you can see the things that I save there if you want to. Okay. Yeah, Pinterest can get so distracting. Even if you're not looking for, like if you're looking for art references, absolutely, but you don't have to be, even if you're not, you know? Ooh, reptiles on Pinterest, ah! Okay, I'm gonna set my phone against my water container. And just in case you guys are curious about the reference image I'm going with, it's this one. So this is just something I had saved to one of my boards. I'll keep it handy so you can see how I'm going to vary it and how the face ultimately isn't going to look just like this. I'm going to change some things, move some things. The primary thing I'm focusing on in using this reference is I like the angle of the head, I like this ear, and I like the shape that the eyebrows and the eye make together. So I'm going to be using this as a rough reference, but you'll see how it varies by the time we get to the end. And I will pull the reference up again a little bit later so you can see what that looks like. Okay, so I'm going to start loose. And my first goal is to get the overall shape of the head in. And I will try to make sure you guys are as in focus as possible. Sorry that our bot is like limiting long messages. I will definitely adjust that in the future. The ears are one of the most helpful features for me to place first, because it kind of gives me landmarks. Like, it gives me a reference point for like where to put literally everything else. So like if I know that from the bottom of the ear, if I draw a straight line out, I'm doing it downward because the head's facing downward, that's going to be the bottom of the nose. So I know that straight line out from the bottom of the ear is going to help me know where to put my nose. So I can put like a rough shape in for the nose. And then once I have the nose, I can find like the length of the face, you know? Because I want to think about how much space I need, and also I want to keep it straight. So straight down from the middle of the nose is the middle of the mouth. I'll be making lots of adjustments. And also this is going to look kind of weird to you guys because I am holding it at an angle, so you're not seeing it flat down. Yeah, it's limited to 140 characters right now, but I will be adjusting that for next time. Yeah, starting from the ear or the nose has been so helpful for me. I used to start from the eyes, but I usually ended up making my eyes way too big when I did that. So starting from something a bit more centralized is really helpful. I think that if you are, especially if you're on a desktop computer, YouTube will tell you how many characters your message is. So for this stream, if you just keep it under 140, that would be great. I will make an adjustment in the future now that I know that that's not really long enough. Okay, so we've got like a rough base for the nose and the ear, and then if we go to where the ear meets the head, not at the top of the ear, but down here, we can get a rough gauge for the center of the eyes. So we want this to be at the same angle as we made this line, approximately. And then another line that I use is the outer edge of the nose comes, I'm drawing these lines darker than I normally would. The outer edge of the nose is going to come up. I actually think that I did this nose too low, yeah. So I'm a really messy sketcher, and I don't erase very often. So I'm sorry. I will erase some of these construction lines before we start painting. Are glasses easier for you because you start from the ear? I don't draw glasses super often, but the difficulty with glasses, in my opinion, is actually the circles, like getting the circular part of glasses in proper perspective. That's really hard for me. Trying to decide if I want to include the neck on this portrait. So I just have to kind of, I don't like that. Nope, I don't like that either. We're gonna skip it for now. We'll come back to it. This is a really messy sketch. So I actually now end up doing the eyes last so that I can get them properly sized, you know. So this face does not look very much like the reference I showed you, but that's just because there are a few features that I knew I wanted to focus on, like the angle of the head. One thing I really love is when eyebrows make this really interesting shape with the eye, and then you have like a little bit of space here and then a lot of space out by the brow bone. Do I find it harder to paint on stream? Yes, I do, because I feel like I have to host while I'm streaming, and I am not, it's more difficult for me to focus on feeling the sketch, you know? Do I also draw bodies? I do. I generally tend to focus more on portraits because I like to add a lot of details. I like to focus on a lot of shifts and details in the face, and that is harder to do when you have to draw the full pose because you're focusing more on the larger gesture than on the details of a smaller particular area. So it just varies depending on what you're working on. Yes, you can use the ear technique for a straightforward face. Absolutely. Because you just want, because then you, instead of tilting the line down like I've done here for, because the face is turned down a bit, you could just, your ears would just be on either side of your head. Like if we look at my head, I have big ears. I love my ears. You know, even now, straight across from my head, like straight across from my ears, the outer corner of my ears, the center of my eye, is going to be right where my ear meets my head, and then the bottom of my ears, straight out, is the bottom of my nose. And that's really helpful. Will this painting be on sale? Maybe. If I'm happy with how it turns out, I might end up listing it. I need to decide if I want a hairline, you know, if I want there to be hair in this painting. I'm trying to get the larger shapes in first. I do like how hair can frame a face sometimes, so we'll play around. I'm not going to do all this front hair because I really do want to focus on like the colors of the skin, so we won't do a ton. I don't know if I'll even do that, but we'll pull the neck back. Like have the neck, oh, that looks good, like that. So I'm trying to focus on the larger silhouette right now. I've also been practicing stuff like for the comic project that I talk about a lot. So I've been kind of, generally my drawings tend to get a little bit more stylized when I'm working on comic stuff. So a little less realistic looking and a little bit more stylized. So maybe something like that. It's so funny, like how it looks to me and how it looks to you guys. They're going to be different, but that's okay. Yeah, I tend to try to focus on looser shapes, not super details, and not super detailed, and focus on the shapes that things make instead of trying to keep everything perfectly, you know, anatomically correct. So something like that. I think I like. Yeah, we'll go with that. I'm going to, I don't have my favorite eraser. Oh, yes, I do. And this is, now we can kind of compare. This is a reference photo next to what we did. So you can see I didn't keep the exact likeness of this person. I was more focusing on the larger shapes. I'm now erasing a bit to lighten up my sketch so that we'll be able to see the watercolors a little bit better. How do you simplify for comics and illustrations? It's hard. Focusing on angles and like the angles that things make and the relationships of shapes, and the fewer lines the better. I know that's kind of vague. If you guys would be interested in like a dedicated video for simplifying for comics, I get a little scared about sharing comic-y things on the channel. Those videos, just because it's not the type of thing I usually do, those videos don't tend to do as well as far as views and things on the channel, which really isn't what it's about. It's about doing what I want to do. But yeah, angry eyebrows are one of my favorite things. I love angry eyebrows. This is a kneaded eraser, and I'm going to lighten the sketch. So we are going to lighten it up a little bit. So you won't be able to see his face quite as well. But I want my watercolors to shine through a bit more. I don't always do this. I honestly don't normally do it, but this sketch is a bit heavy, so. Ooh, his eyes would be awesome without irises. I agree. I don't know if I'll do it this time because I want to focus on like the contrast and how some of those details matter. But if you are interested in seeing how I've been slowly piecing things together for the comic, I do have an Instagram account where I post only comic-y things. When this is done, when this live stream is over, I will add a link to, I need to like make a list of things I need to add links for. I'll add a link to the comic account in the description of this video. What was the other thing I said I was going to add a link to? Okay, comic account. And there's something else. If somebody remembers, let me know. By the way, this is random. This thing I'm drawing on is like this drawing that my daughter made for me of a unicorn. She loves unicorns. And she wrote Mom on it. She drew this for me because she's an amazing artist. I love that kiddo. Okay. Anyway. And the eraser, I'm not sure where this eraser is from. It says W Air In plus plastic eraser. I got it in like a subscription box. Pinterest. And the White Nights palette. Thank you. Pinterest. White Nights palette. You guys are superheroes. Yeah, there are some links to the supplies used in the video already down there. So, you can find that down there. Okay, so now we've got our sketch. It's lightened, and we are going to paint. I'm gonna still have my reference up because I will use it for values and things. Yeah, my daughter, oh my goodness, you guys, that girl, she like has been writing whole books and telling stories and creating whole universes about stuff, and she's a superhero. My son is as well, and I just, oh my goodness, they make me happy. Okay, I'm gonna clean up these two wells on my palette. The subscription box that I got those supplies from was Stationery Selection, which is like Japanese stationery supplies. I was subscribed to that box for close to a year, and I loved it. It was great. And yes, after this is uploaded, or after this is done, you will be able to find the stream on the channel. And then we're going to talk about working with values as well. Somebody asked a question. And when it comes to values, especially when you're working with watercolors, I think that it helps to start with like a mid-tone value and then keep in mind the areas of most contrast. So the parts where you have the darkest values should be focal areas. So if I wanted the focus point to be the eyes of this, that's where we're going to have our darkest values next to our lightest values, that sort of thing. But we'll talk about it as we go. Okay, so now I also need to choose what sort of color palette I want to use for this painting. So I think I will focus on that trio of colors that we talked about over here, right here. So I'll work, this is Naples Yellow Reddish, that Cherry Quinacridone, and the Indigo. So I think we'll focus on those colors so we can see how they vary. Okay. So I'm going to start in the area of the eyes just to give myself a base to work on. And so I will start with putting in some darker values so I can get my feet under me, you know? So I can have an idea of what's darkest, and then, so what happens sometimes is I make my values way too light in the beginning, and then once I put in something dark, everything else looks way too light, and it gets frustrating. So starting with something darker right away can be helpful in some instances, and keeping my phone on is gonna be a challenge. I should just turn it off so it doesn't like unlock, you know, like change the settings. So if you guys want to be at a different angle, please just let me know. That Japanese box was Stationery Selection. The person who runs it is very nice, and they've slowly been growing it over like the last couple of years. I actually haven't super kept up lately, but it's a beautiful box. Oh yes, the Naples Yellow and Indigo, and like a warm red. This is like my favorite palette. So we're going to start with an area where I know I want the colors to be darker. so that I can base the rest of the palette off of that. So I mixed together like a purpley color with my indigo and my red, and that purple's going to have a slightly darker value. And to that color I just mixed a little bit more red to paint in what's technically the whites of the eyes, but whites of eyes are almost never white. And it can add a lot of depth to knock back that white early on. So that's what I'm doing. If at any point you are having trouble seeing and you'd like to be closer as well, let me know. So I'm going to try to keep as much of my palette in focus or in view as I can. So what I'm doing now is I added a bit more blue, and now I'm adding some yellow to neutralize this color because I don't want it to be so, I want it to be a bit more gray. I don't want like a super indigo color. And I'm going to be working in the shadow of like kind of the eye socket. So the shadow of this whole brow area. And while my paint is wet, it's all going to kind of blend into one another, which for this first layer is fine. Someone asked if I often change brushes when painting, and it depends on the brush. So this is a big brush. This is a size 14, and I'm definitely feeling that it's very large, but because this brush comes to a relatively fine point, I'm not feeling the need right now to switch my brushes. So I'm going to actually include like the whole eyebrow in this first shadow shape because I need to get down some values at this point that are going to help me to see the values of everything, if that makes sense. So I'm not focusing on details right now, I'm focusing on larger shapes. That's what I should say. And then I can darken this a little more. So we're already putting in some values and building up a focal point. How do you maintain the white of the paper? Sometimes I won't try, and I will use gouache later on for highlights. You can use I don't really like masking fluid, personally. I haven't had a lot of success with masking fluid. I just try to, if I really want to maintain the white, I just have to try to be careful, you know. Another thing you'll notice I'm doing is I'm mostly working in only this one well. So all of my colors are mixes of each other, you know? So I just turned that gray into this sort of brownish mix. It still has all three colors in it, but because the colors are combinations of one another, they're gonna mix together really nicely. So this time I wanted something a little bit warmer for the shadow that is cast by the hair. And I want that to go up through here. And then I will use water to kind of dilute and soften the edge. And then I will repeat that color. So make that color exist in more than one spot. I'm also going to use it for like some redness in the cheeks. Having the same color exist in multiple places can help to keep your color palette more cohesive. Oh, that's a really good question. Someone asked if I found any mediums or paints that surprised me with color theory knowledge, like didn't make sense. So I find that watercolors are kind of forgiving in the sense that you can layer colors and things can be really transparent. When I start working with more opaque mediums, I have more trouble because the color that you see is going to be a bit more opaque. It's a bit more sturdy and it sticks out more. You know what? It's really hard to articulate what I mean. But when I work with acrylics or oil paints, which I haven't done very often, but I'd like to do more soon, I have a harder time creating cohesive palettes because the colors are more opaque and they're just there on the paper, you know? Like here I can overlap colors and it's a bit more of a subtler, softer process, but with more opaque mediums I have more trouble. Yeah, so I just painted over this one eye because I'm telling myself that this whole area, I'm thinking about the larger area and not just the smaller details. I'm actually going to paint over it again. This larger area is all in shadow. So I'm only going to make myself more frustrated with my values later on if I don't make it darker now. So just going, this is all in shadow, and knowing that and starting there is really important. So I know that that's really light right now, so I need to make it darker. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to kind of lay in the whole shadow shape over here. So I'm going to go over this again. And I'm thinking about this whole area is in shadow. So I'm just going to cover the whole thing. And if I want to vary the temperature of the color, like when skin is reflecting light off of itself, so like as we get closer to the neck and the nose and these areas where skin is reflecting light off of skin, the color tends to get a little bit warmer. It's almost like, I always think of how if you touch your neck, it feels warm, because like your skin is just close to itself, if that makes sense. So I tend to make this area a little bit darker, and I'm focusing on the one big shadow shape right now and just allowing that to connect to itself. So the shadow shape of here, like the side of the face, connects down with the lip and connects down with the neck, and all of those shadows can just connect with one another. Okay. So, and then you have to decide when you want to soften your edges and when to leave them hard. Like if the shadow is curving away from you, like here where the chin is curving, I can soften that shadow. But if it's a cast shadow, it can be beneficial to leave it harsher to show the difference in form. So like the lip casting a shadow here can be left harder than like the curving away shape of the face down here. That's like a concept that I could spend a lot more time talking about. But another thing that happens when it comes to using colors and mixing colors is I tend to work less saturated in the beginning and then build up saturation in areas of focus later on. So now I've got some red on my brush and I'm going in to add like almost like the blushy areas in certain parts of the face. Doesn't have to be everywhere. But I tend to focus red values around the eyes. For some reason, I like to make it look like everybody's crying. And you can do some around the nose, of course, the mouth, and in the ears. Another thing that I think is going to help us out a lot as we've got down like the first bits of a lot here. And moving forward, I think it's going to be really helpful to lay in some darker values. So, adding contrast to the hair and to this one eye that I know I want to be super visible. Ooh, Kellogg's Loops. He's amazing. Oh my goodness. I think that he was one of the first people who inspired me to start using watercolors, and he works so hard. Oh, Denise is here. Hi, Denise. Denise is from In Liquid Color. I'm sure a lot of you guys know her. She's great. Okay, so to add contrast now, because I can keep fiddling with this, but until I have a better gauge on my values, I'm not gonna be able to move forward. I'll just be making a mess. So if I want to make progress, I need to deepen my values at this point. So I'm mixing up, this is kind of a greenish color. So I'm going to, and this brush, this is a silver black velvet round in size 14. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is just try to get in a darker value for the hair so that I can see my contrast better. And hair is so fun because now's the time when I can start to add like strokes of hair, especially around the outside. I want to be careful. I don't want to actually do too much on the inside because I still have work to work in those areas, so I would probably just end up smudging it. But I can do a lot to frame parts of the face now and add like a darker value, something to help us out a bit. And we'll do something over here as well. And the looser these strokes are, the better. Something like that. That looks fun. It's Crayola black. It is. I like somehow in my subconscious I was like still thinking about the Crayola black. That's funny. And I love with watercolors how you can kind of see the separation between the yellow and blue. Hopefully you guys can see it up there. Oh yeah, my yellow is very messy now because I just stuck it right in the... I had blue and then just stuck it right in there. So yep, that's a mess now. That's okay. I found that if I want this process to bring me joy, there are certain ways for me personally that I kind of have to work, and that means that my pans get messy a lot. So I have a base value in for the hair now. Someone mentioned in Photoshop you can change colors into values. I'm assuming you mean something like changing it to grayscale, which is actually a really interesting point, because that can be really helpful in gauging your values. So if I wanted to like take a picture of the painting that I'm working on, for example, my phone always overexposes pictures. I can take a picture of the painting at this point. This is one of my favorite things to do. And then I can edit the photo, come down here, go to saturation, and turn it all the way down. So what I've done now is I've given myself a black and white version of the painting at its current stage to help me better see the values. This is one of my favorite things to do. So now I can see where the darkest parts are, where the... What green? That's Crayola black. Extreme messiness. Ooh, that's difficult because I tend to embrace a lot of messiness. So it's hard for me to say, I don't know, like how to do it. Now, oil paints, that's a totally different beast and something that I struggle with. But with watercolors, I try to, I don't know. I wish I could better answer how to deal with messiness, but I tend to get pretty messy. Okay, anyway, I've got my picture here, and I can now see that even though these colors, like this is a shadow value and it's kind of purpley, when we look at it like this, they're all kind of the same value, and it's not really doing much to actually be darker. So I can see here that this side of the face, if I actually want that to be a shadow, it needs to be way darker, you know? And it's not super, it's not super effective. So if I want to better gauge my values, and you can do this at any point in the process, you can just keep taking pictures of your painting, keep gauging your values, and going, is there dark areas where I want them to be, and is it light where I want it to be, and am I separating things? That can be helpful. So you can get the color distraction out of the way and just look at your values. Okay, so that was helpful. Let's continue. I don't tend to follow a ton of specific color theory rules when it comes to what color shadows would be. I tend to think like if a shadow is cooler in its densest areas, so like let's work on a shadow area now so I can show you an example. So I've got like a very blue cool shadow area because I want to make a dark value right here underneath the chin, right? And I want this to be relatively dark, and it's also pretty cool as far as being close to blue. And as that shadow comes out and away, oh, I should refocus you. Sorry, guys. There we go. As that shadow comes out and away and starts to pick up more light, I can make it warmer. So I can just add more red to the mix that I already had, and it's going to give that implication of warmth and light. As the color comes down, and you can, you know, exaggerate that even more, like give yourself even more red. And another thing to keep in mind is, like, when it comes to necks, the value of the neck overall, if I leave white on here, this is going to stand out a lot. So if I want the focus to be in the face, I need to push the whole neck area back. Oh yeah, thank you. I'll zoom you out a little bit more so that you can actually see the neck. Good thought. Good point. Okay, like that. So now we've got like a warmer color. Whoops. As I throw my brush around. But I want it to still be pretty desaturated. So the neck isn't going to be a huge focal area, so I'm going to push the whole value back so we don't have as much white, you know, just sticking out from the neck. How can you get better at realistic facial features? Everything like looks the same, like the same nose and mouth. I think one thing that's really helpful is when you're looking at reference images, or even if you're just drawing yourself, is to focus on the overall shape of the feature instead of thinking of it like what it is. So just think of it as a shape instead of as a nose. So if I think about the nose as a triangular wedge, and then I'm trying to draw the wedge based on a particular angle, or changing it based on the type of face that I'm drawing, it can be really helpful to just stop going, okay, I know what an eye looks like, and I'm going to draw an eye, because then you'll always draw them the same, and that I struggled with that as well. But you instead have to look at the overall shape of it to go like, is this like a rectangle? Is it like a triangular wedge type shape? You know, focus more on the shape and remove the feature like in your brain while you're building it. I do use wet on wet, Carolina asks. I tend to focus more on that in the earlier stages of painting. And then as I'm building on layers, I let the layers be a bit more separate from one another and blend into each other less in certain areas. Yes, this is the White Nights palette that was modified. In areas where I want more warmth, I try to lay colors sort of next to each other. So like connecting this red to a bit of the yellow. Okay, we need more contrast. I'm now, because I want to focus on the eye, like I want to get that eye done, because I'm kind of fiddling around at this point, I'm going to use a smaller brush. So now I'm going to switch to a size 8 round. And we're going to get our darker values in. So I'm just going to pull from this big mix that we already have. There's a lot of colors going on in here. Let's see. And we're just going to focus on getting this eye darker. There's a tiny little highlight that I'm trying not to cover up. This is a technique I didn't used to do. I used to just like let myself add highlights in gouache. But lately I found that it's very satisfying to try to maintain like a little bit of a white highlight. I want the darkness of the shape of the eye to kind of melt into the shadow and eyebrow. So I'm gonna keep connecting those shapes like that. Like I kind of want them to all feel like one shape. I'm having trouble for whatever reason today getting like those super dark values that I want. So I'm making a big mess in my palette. This is a combination of all three of the colors. I'm trying to get something dark and sort of in between. Because we need our darkest value. Gotta have it. Excuse me while I am focusing a bit. It looks so stylized. All that comic stuff is just in my brain and I can't can't get it out. That's okay. And then I have to decide how dark I want the eyebrow to be. If I want it to be as dark. Eyebrows. I used to try so hard with eyebrows. And then I just realized that I would be happier if I just made them vaguely eyebrow shaped blobs. That I was happier doing that. Oh, the auto mod. Sorry guys, I will definitely make adjustments. We will learn together how to navigate the mod. So we've got a lot more contrast in this eye now. And it's kind of crazy to me how stylized it looks. Don't even know why. That's okay. It's fun. I think it has to do with this line over here. Sometimes I like to just blend out the values in the eye instead of leaving it like super stark. Instead of just having like this line, you know, where the iris begins and the white of the eye ends, and just let that be a little bit blurrier. I also want to add a bit more contrast to the ear. Contrast is how you know when a painting's done, you know? And I'm just kind of getting some shadow shapes in there. Oh. How many watercolors do you have? Do you have to have at least 24? Will 12 work? Oh yeah, absolutely 12 will work. That's kind of the, like in this painting, I'm only using 3 colors, in case you weren't here earlier in the stream. Oh, congrats on making your first YouTube video, Kevin. Yeah, so for this painting, I'm only using 3 colors intentionally, because we're working with like a limited palette here. So 12, you can definitely use. Oh, somebody asked about the camera. Thank you. The camera is the Panasonic Lumix G85. I've had it for a few years now. It's a good camera. It allows me to make 4K videos for you guys. And it's been good to me. Someday I'd like to upgrade just so I can get my, because you can do 4K with this camera, but you can't do 4K at 60 frames per second, and I miss having 60 frames per second so I can slow down footage for you. And you can do 1080 at 60 frames on this camera, but not 4K. So someday, I'd like to get that back and get some nice slow-mo shots for you guys. Thank you for the hair compliments. You guys are so nice. Have I shared my setup here? I haven't. I did a studio tour where I talked about all my equipment and stuff a while ago, but I haven't done it for the new studio yet. I would like to, once things are a bit more set up. I still have so much to finalize here. But once things are more settled, I absolutely want to give you guys a tour and talk about everything I'm using. What kind of stand do I use for my camera? My camera is actually on a wall-mounted arm. So, like the mount is attached to the wall over there, and then it runs out across the table to here. That works pretty well for me. Neck and shoulders. I think that if you look up, one thing that was really helpful for me was like if you look on Pinterest for drawing anatomy, you can see how other artists draw anatomy, which can be helpful, but also how they break down realistic anatomy. Because, you know, you don't want to just copy someone else's drawing that doesn't actually help you learn the anatomy yourself. But seeing how other artists break it down is great. There are a lot of YouTube channels on here for anatomy, and I would recommend looking them up, like Psychra. Psychra has some older videos that are really great for learning anatomy, and so does, of course, Proco. That dude is a pro, and I don't want to say I would never be at his skill level, but that guy's, he's very skilled. There are a lot of wonderful people on YouTube who've made a lot of wonderful content about anatomy. And they break it down into tons of different parts. Okay, so now we are getting to the point now where some of our values are starting to be established. Oh my goodness! Thank you for the super chat. Ow, that's so sweet. Oh, look at that cute little pair. Thank you. That makes my heart happy. Oh, I love you too. Bah. So sweet. While we're talking about people being super sweet, I wanted to thank you guys. A lot of you knew about this, but maybe not all of you, the charity event that we were running for the month of December, which has now concluded, and we raised over $2,000 together, you guys. And that was donated to the National Alliance to End Homelessness, and that was all of the YouTube revenue from December, as well as from my shop sales for the month. And I was so honored to be a part of that with you guys. It was just over $2,400 in total. So yeah, values is where to shade, but there's also a lot of value range on the face. So the only places that you would actually want to leave white would be highlights, like the brightest of highlights. Other than that, everything's gonna have a value range. So whether it's like the local value or it's something that's curving away from the light and is kind of slightly in shadow, everything has a value, and white is only reserved for the lightest of areas. How do you make the color look so natural with unnatural colors? That's all about color relationships and values. So by making areas that are supposed to be darker, I can make it look like, you know, you look at it and you know you're looking at a face because the values are where they should be. And I'm making this even darker because I want to reinforce that we're in shadow here. To be honest, I think we are soon going to be done with this painting just because of time. So, oh, how do you make the hair look so natural? Oh, the hair with unnatural colors. I think it has to do with shapes. So making the overall silhouette of the hair something that makes sense and is readable and looks like hair. So if you can get the shapes and the values right, it almost doesn't matter what colors you use. So the brown that I have here is a mix of all three of the colors we're using in this palette. Again, we're using a limited palette of Naples yellow, a cherry red, and they're in the Roman small indigo. And this is just a mix of all of those colors. You can kind of see them separating from each other in the palette. Royal Talons gouache, somebody asked about. I have very limited experience with Royal Talons gouache. I only have like one color. I think it's Naples yellow, which I love. And it's been, I like it a lot fresh out of the tube. When it dries, it cracks a lot, and I don't like that as much. But if you're using Royal Talons gouache fresh out of the tube, I think it's great, but I don't have a ton of experience. Okay, so now I want to just add a bit more contrast to the hair. So I'm gonna go into some of like the under layers of the hair and add, just because the hair can be left as like a flat shape, but we can add a little bit of depth to it just by thinking about layers, parts where it's like facing away from the light, you know? So where the hair casts a little bit of a shadow, we can just add some depth to our hair shapes. Super loose, super loose. Have I ever tried using oil pastels? A little bit. I don't have a ton of experience with them. This, what I'm doing now, this second value in hair, is not something that I do all the time. Sometimes I just skip this step and leave the hair flat, because the more contrast you add to an area, the more attention you're drawing to it. I want to add a little bit of hair coming down like that. So I'm trying to be loose and hold my brush further up and just commit to the stroke, you know? If you get too nervous, it won't work. Or if you stop in the middle of it. That was probably a mistake. Oh well. Yeah, somebody asked about lips. Thank you. I feel like I need a lot of practice with lips because I don't actually know a ton about them. I just try to focus a little bit on the again, somebody said it so perfectly, the values. So one thing I'm doing now is I'm kind of blocking in this other eye shape, and what I'm doing is just focusing on the larger, darker values instead of, you know, I don't need all the details, it's in shadow. The more details you add to an area in shadow, the less it looks like a shadow, because, you know, when it's dark you can't see very well. So if you add too many details there, you'll lose that shadowy effect. You kind of want things to get lost in that darkness, you know? Oh, I haven't added anything, any of those extra notes to the description yet, but I do have a list of things. So I will add the comic Instagram account to the description when we're done. There you go. Okay, so I think now I want to reinforce like the darkest, like the pupil, you know, like bring back the darkness in the pupil. Because the whole eye is kind of a blur right now, which I like, but I think we can do just a little bit of detail there to bring that contrast out. So I'll zoom you guys in so you can see. Zooming in. Focusing. Let me bump up the eyes. Hold on. There we go. Hopefully that looks okay. It was a little dark, wasn't it? So we're just zooming in just now for this. Sorry, guys. Okay, zooming out a little for this, or zooming in for this small detail. We will zoom out again. I actually think that this eye is kind of drifting too far in this direction on the face, which was probably an issue with the original sketch, but it's okay. Okay, I'm just kind of assessing now. One thing I really like to do is to add some warmth to like the bottom of the eye, like a brown. It's like a subtle thing that you can't always see, but I like it. Okay. Now, I want to talk about a couple little value things. So let's back up a little and we're going to look at this painting as a whole. And we're going to assess together. So let me turn the ISO back down. Like that. That should be fine. I hope that looks okay to you guys. So now looking at the painting as a whole, and thinking about what we need to do to make it finished. So let's see. I think to wrap this up, I want to have a little more contrast in the ear. So I can just add like another quick layer there. Aww. I'm sorry that we're having some issues with the bot, guys. I will definitely make changes in the future. So let's see. A little bit more value in the ear. We're just about done here, I think. Oh, another thing I wanted to say is I have kind of a lot of white here and here and here, and I have to decide if all of those sections of the face are actually being hit by the light, because that's the only area that should be left completely white, is if the light is hitting it directly. And we can really help ourselves out by removing, like knocking down the white in areas that just aren't supposed to be completely white. So like, for example, we're doing this for science. I'm gonna get rid of the white here, right? That doesn't need to be white. So I can try to find something close to a local color. No, the bot is not a person. It's automated. So we're just testing out the system. So I'm knocking back some of that white. And I'm also going to knock back some of the white here with some more blushy tones. There it goes. And then reserve super white areas for where it's like the light is hitting it directly, you know? That doesn't mean it can't be light, but save our super white values for other areas. This eye is kind of bothering me now. It's like a little too big and a little bit too that way. How to create depth in darker skin tones. I think that could be really fun to make a video about that. Because you can apply a lot of the same techniques, but there's definitely some other things to keep in mind, like overworking and overlayering and managing saturation, because you want things to be darker, but you don't want it to be oversaturated, Okay, I think this is a good test experiment. Another thing you could do to better see your values is you could knock back the white of the page. So right now we have our background. Our background is white. So, we are seeing it all on that sort of background, and that can really affect how we perceive like the values for the rest of the piece. I'm gonna add a little bit more color. There we go. So like knocking back the white of the page, like for example, if I was to paint the entire background black, everything else would look so much lighter because of the relative value. So just as an example here, let's take another picture of our painting so far. And we're gonna do just like we did before. Yeah, that eye is kind of bulgy. Yes, this will be available later. Gonna go to saturation, turn that all the way down and save it. Okay. So now, if we look at, here, let me show this to you guys. If we look at the current version of our painting in black and white, we can see our values better. And if we compare that with the old version, we can see that we did a lot to establish values. But it's not just black spots and white spots, It's not just places that are really dark and really light. There's a lot of in-between values that we have now that we didn't have before. So it's helpful to see. That's one of my favorite things to do, is to switch between, to take a look at your painting in black and white. It's super helpful. Gets the color out of the way. Nice. Okay. If you guys have any more questions, like anything else you want to ask about color theory ramblings or this painting, just let me know. I think we're going to wrap up for today. And I will talk to you guys in the future. Thank you for hanging out with me today. It was fun. It was fun to do a stream. I feel like we've been here longer than I think. Thank you for coming. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay. Goodbye. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Goodbye, goodbye. Goodbye, 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 goodbye. I don't know why I have to say bye for so long. Okay. Bye, guys.